What's going on, everyone? My name is Isaac B. Hongos here, back with another review for you guys, and it's something that I've been meaning to review because I've recently bought the FroKnowsPhoto guide to DSLR. Now, as a longtime photographer, definitely just a photographer, I've always been scared to dive into video. I've tried to do the research and I've tried, to look for all the information that I needed. However, it seemed very, very scattered. So when Jared Polin announced that he was coming out with a video guide for DSLR, I wanted to jump on it. However, price point that he was selling it at, it just seemed a little too extreme. However, with a recent sale, I was able to purchase it. Now, the way I'm going to do this is that there are 5 videos that come along when you buy the package. So what I'm going to do is break it up into 2 parts. I'm going to be showing first and second, and then 3, 4, and 5. Now, starting off with what is the introduction. The introduction is where Jared and Todd break down everything from the basics. So you could be the very, very beginner, and they break down the ISO, the effects of it, the effects of aperture, and when you're pulling focus and what the effects are. And of course, you're going to be talking about shutter speed, which will show you the effects. And I love that they have this instrument here that shows you the effects that are used when you're using higher and lower shutter speed. In addition to that, they explain, why we use certain frame rates, like why you use 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, and answered a question that I was always looking for, which is, if you're shooting 60 frames per second and it's like the best thing to use because you're getting that much more information, why don't you always shoot that? And they answered my question very clearly, which was that because you're shooting at a high frame rate, your data multiplies by 2.5, and in addition to that, it's mostly used for that slow motion. During this whole thing, breaking that very first part is just like for the very, very beginners, which I love because, it explained the exposure triangle in a very different way, and it just took like a different perspective that I was used to when it came to the exposure triangle. In addition to that, they talk about glide cams, audio, CF cards and SD cards, and what to bring. And during this time period, it just seemed like they were just gliding over everything, glide cam. Like they were just gliding over the audio, like they were just gliding over the glide cam, like they were just going over certain things. However, I hoped that during later on in videos that they would explain why they're using certain tools. And later on, of course, they did do that. They showed you why you would use a glide cam and in which situation they would use it. And in addition, they gave me a helpful tip, which I didn't know personally, which was that to always use wide angle lenses when it comes to a glide cam, because you have like that range of focus where you might miss, and having a wide angle is just a lot better of a lens. And of course, lastly, during that first part, they use something which is very, very important and something that I've been meaning to understand for a very long time, which was a 3-point setup. Now, during this 3-point setup, they went step by step, very slowly, and I love it that so far during the first part, everything has been visualized. I'm a very visual learner. That was something that I really, really enjoyed. During the first part, however, I wish they dove a little bit more into I'm a gearhead, so I would love to know, why or, which tools they've used for years or which tools become their staple. And during every transition, during the first section, we see these quick tips. Like, one of the quick tips that I can really, really relate to, and I wish someone told me, was that always use name brand batteries, because you never know when those, third-party batteries are going to fail on you. Now, moving on to part 2, we see the tactics being used and implemented on a shoot. We see Dave Leno, who has been on the show before, and we see Todd taking the lead and showing how, he can be professional. This is so strange because we're so used to like the Taco Bell Becky persona doing Raw Talk. So we see that. We see the professionalism. We see what it takes. And I love that they go step by step on their setup. They go with a very simple 60D with a 24-70 f2.8. And in addition to that, they explain what frame rate they're using. They explain their ISO. They explain, all these things and why they're using them. In addition to that, they're really, really well prepared on a shoot, and they give you quick tips along the way with Jared's commentary on the side, which is very useful. Not only that, during this whole thing, we see development. You might come in with a pre-plan, but you get inspired during the set. And we see this during the interview as Todd is developing, the questions that he's asking Dave, and how the interview is going, and he's explaining as to why these things are happening. In addition to that, not only are they prepared, but they're taking multiple takes, which is something that I sometimes forget because, you see these amazing movies or you see these amazing videos and you think that, they're one take all the time. However, we get a breakdown. We see that it sometimes takes multiple shots. I love how everything is taken really, really slowly, and there's nothing being fast paced or anything like that. And during the second half, we also see, you know, the B-roll being made, the B-roll being shot 20 or 30 times. I'm just kidding, being shot like twice or 3 times so that you get that perfect motion. In addition to that, they went into something that I wanted, which was the explanation of why they're using certain gear, you know, why they're using a slider, or why they're going to use, you know, a rig or a focus puller. And that's something that's really, really useful. You're not only getting the explanation of what they're doing with their movements, but what they're doing with the gear so that it gets implemented correctly. In addition, I like to see that not only did we go from the set, but we went to the final product. However, one thing that I didn't like was that they didn't explain too much of their editing technique, which I would love to see. And that's one of the things that's so far disappointing with the first, you know, half of the guide. They didn't really dive into any editing. And now we move to the very ending of the second part of the video, which is YouTube videos. This is where Jared takes the lead. And during this half, the rhythmic tone change, you know, from the organization to how it's shot to, you know, the explanation. Now, if I could have put this in a certain way, it was like completely different, and I felt a little bit disappointed with this section. As someone that aspires to make, you know, more YouTube videos, I felt like at this point, it was completely a different shift, and to me it just seemed a little bit more fast-paced with a lot less detail. Yes, he went into how he shot, you know, just a regular explanation video of the D3300 in addition to how he sets up his audio. But personally, I would have rather seen how they set up the stage for Raw Talk. However, I still found it interesting because we get to see how he sets up his mentality when he's shooting some of these videos that we've been watching for years. However, I wish there was more detail because YouTube videos are something that I really, really enjoy. Now, what's my impression so far of the first half of the video? So far, I'm learning. I can definitely say that I've learned a lot more than I did when I was, you know, when I was trying to scatter and look for all these videos separately. However, one thing that I'm disappointed with the video so far is that they're not showing me the editing technique. We get to, you know, the set, and then we get to the final product. That's my personal opinion, because I would really love to see the video editing that was done beforehand. However, I hope that later on they show us at least a small glimpse of how they edited. Maybe that's a possibility as to why they developed the second guide for this, because so far it's been a few good hours spent on this, and you know, I'm really enjoying the cinematography and everything in between that. So far I'm not disappointed with the guide. However, I will transition and see the rest of it, and I will get to you guys later on as I finish that review. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Isaac Mihangos, isaacmihangos.com.